Welcome to Care Less with Carly, the podcast for people who are done playing by their roles. I'm your host, Carly Lynn, and each week we'll cut through the noise with real talk, bold conversation, and expert insights to help you trade perfection for purpose and live life on your own terms. Today's guest, Julia Mazur, went viral and found herself at the center of a culture war. But what came next was unexpected, empowering, and a reminder that living life for you is the real revolution. We were brought together in a WhatsApp chat, and Julia told me what she was doing and what her life plans were. And I was like, this girl has got it, and I want to do what she's doing. So it is my pleasure to welcome Julia to the show. Your podcast, Pretty Much Done, is one of the more popular dating podcasts. And I want to start off by learning how your upbringing shaped you and your view of romantic relationships and the role that they play.
There's so much that led me to starting my podcast. Obviously, you mentioned my cultural upbringing. And so, Pretty Much Done, the reason for the name, I like to tell people it's for people who are pretty much done listening to the societal noise and pressure around being single. And I thought for me, it was a cultural thing that I had experienced this growing up. I'm Russian Jewish, and in my household, a lot of the rhetoric was get married, have kids, become a doctor or a lawyer, and that was sort of the life path that you were supposed to embark on. And I remember in my 20s, I spent so much of my time trying to accomplish those goals. Dating apps came to be when I was 20 years old. My mom and sister had told me to sign up for a JDate when I was 19 years old. And I'm this 19-year-old looking for a husband on JDate, having no idea what I wanted really. But because it was prescribed to me, I thought it was what I wanted. And I would find myself in these very good on paper relationships, but ultimately I felt very unfulfilled. And I realized with time that was because I was following a life path that I hadn't pursued on my own accord. It was just something that was told to me that would make me happy. And I got into this really toxic relationship in COVID with a very good on paper guy. Like everyone around me was saying to me, how'd you get so lucky? How did you end up with this person? This is amazing. And I was deeply, severely depressed. Meanwhile, like friends and family were saying, can't wait for you to get married. What is the ring gonna look like? What is the wedding gonna look like? So the only outlet I had was I turned to podcasts during that time, as a lot of us did during COVID, but it felt like it was a reprieve. I would go on walks and I'd listen to podcasts. And I remember listening to one podcast. It was Life with Mariana Hewitt, and she had Jen Atkin on, the celebrity hairstylist. And Jen Atkin was on, and she said to Mariana, I tell all of my girlfriends that a breakup is one weekend of moving your stuff out. You just rip the Band-Aid off and you do it. And I remember kind of like stopping in my tracks listening to it and feeling like it planted some sort of seed in me, but I wasn't quite ready. And a few months after that, I did. And after I found that bravery of moving out, despite feeling ashamed for it not working out and all of my friends and family calling me crazy, I felt free. If I can be that moment of clarity for someone else, specifically a young woman going through this same situation, feeling like she has no choice but to get married to the good on paper guy, I want to be that moment of clarity for her as well. And so it propelled me to start the podcast and interview these experts and psychologists and love coaches and dating coaches to help us figure out what it is that we want out of life instead of what's been prescribed to us.
First of all, thank you for sharing all of that. There's a lot of it that I connect to, and I'm sure listeners connect to. You just made a decision to really do the work to figure out what you want. And I think so many people go through their entire lives and never face those feelings. And they just accept that that's what it is because that's how their family expects them to live or their friends expect them to live. And you are brave. I love that your mission in why you started the podcast was because you wanted to share this strength with others. So let's talk about now breaking it down. So you got out of this relationship and that must have felt empowering and scary, but empowering. And then you decided you were going to start this podcast. And then what? What happened as a result?
There was something before in between that I think it was super important in my journey. So I always thank that relationship because we would try everything to fix things and to figure it out, and we were only together, like, 9 months, so in retrospect, this is crazy, but my mom said to me, "I have this friend who's a couples counselor, she's a therapist, maybe you can see her." And so we decided to do couples counseling. The couples counseling didn't stick, but the therapist did. And so I'm always super grateful to him for introducing me to her. And I remember I started seeing her one on one. I had never done therapy. I was 28 at the time. And I had my first session with her, and kind of sat me down. And I'm someone who relationship has always been important to me. I really love partnership. I've always been looking for partnership. And we spoke about my previous relationships. And she gave me this homework at the end of our session. And she said, I want you to take the weekend and I want you to think about, what do all of the men that you've seen or dated have in common with each other? So I'm just sitting on the weekend and I'm so type A and perfectionist and I'm like, I really want to just like
You're
ace
deep
this test.
diving,
Yeah, I'm like,
investigating.
I'm gonna have the answer that she's looking for. And so what I came up with, she said, no, Julia, what they all have in common is you. You chose them.
Mm.
And so I really, yeah, I was like, okay.
Whoa.
Yeah. And so I went on this journey of figuring out why I was choosing these men. And I thought so much of it did have to do with like my picker and all of that. And I guess tangentially it did. But I went on this really intentional journey and I didn't realize it, but I had to really work on my self confidence. I was deriving so much of my value from someone else. And so I would find these qualities in another person of successful in business. I want to be successful in business, so I'm going to date someone who's successful in business. Really good looking and fit. Like all of these things that I was clinging on to that I didn't have within, or I maybe didn't accept about myself within. I was trying to derive my value from those partnerships. And I kind of became like really integrated in therapy and I had this really meaningful plant medicine journey and realizing I didn't love myself. I didn't value myself. And only through that, I was really able to go on this journey of feeling really comfortable with who I was. And I think that as a result, I've been able to tune out that noise. I'm sure that people who see me from afar are confused about the path that I've gone on. I'm not married. I'm 31 and single. I've now lived in 3 different places, moving on to potentially my 4th different place. I quit my corporate job. I started a podcast. I create dating content on the internet. I'm sure that looks to some people a bit confusing considering how I grew up, but I've become really rooted in myself and I'm not always perfect, but I'm pretty good about tuning out the noise and the judgment from others and feeling really grounded in following the path that I wanna follow for myself and not for any other reason.
Right. And I am certain that that is a feeling so many people see themselves in. When you were just reading back those stats to me and the way you were explaining it in your tone, in my head, I'm like, here's a well-traveled girl. She's lived all over the country. She's brave enough to quit her job. She's putting out content into the world to help people. Like, there's so much about our experience that really is the story we tell ourselves. And
Yeah.
I think it's amazing when you start to realize how much the movie that we play of ourselves in our head impacts how we see ourselves. And I'm sure that's part of the work that you did when you were sitting with a shadow side or doing plant medicine or in therapy. Like you were sitting with the parts of you that were not comfortable or maybe needed more love. And I'm sure, hopefully, now when you tell your story, you're like, who cares what anybody sees when they look at me? I feel good about this story. And that's the only thing that matters.
And to your point, there's still so much to uncover. My shadow self showed me a lot about how I feel about my physical looks, like my body, because I've been 80 pounds heavier and I saw myself 80 pounds heavier. And so I think that I've become really rooted in my physical body. And then there is still imposter syndrome based on my upbringing and just like the situation I'm in of feeling like if I'm not this corporate tech boss, girl boss, if I'm not, Alex Earl on the internet or Tinks or whatever, I'm a fraud and I haven't made it. And so there is still work to be done in that regard. And so that's a good call out from you for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's a reframe. And the Alex Earls or the Tinkses, they were also at one point just a girly who had something to say and started saying it. And it connected with people, and it then connected with a lot of people.
Yeah.
I sometimes remind myself imposter syndrome in our world today where it's so easy to compare, and we are seeing how to coexist with technology in a way where it enhances our life but doesn't distract us from it. And I think
Mhm.
there's a lot of opportunity there. At what point did you think, okay, I'm going to double down on helping people, exploring, myth busting societal expectations, and I'm taking this all the way? Because that's a really hard thing to do. And you did it. And I don't want to gloss over that.
Thank you. I think it's the hardest thing I've ever done is quitting my corporate job and doubling down. So I worked at Tinder for 5.5 years. I worked on the marketing team there and the partnerships team there. And for me, that was just a dream role. And looking back, so much of what I loved about it was the the aspect that I got to market to daters. I love being in the mind of daters. I'm someone who has online dated a lot. I was on the apps for so many years. I understood what a single person's journey on the platforms was like. And so I loved being a part of that. And then funny enough, I got recruited to work at Spotify, to do brand partnerships for them, but then the product that I was working on got sunset pretty quickly, and then I was moved to the podcast partnerships team. When I look back at my career, I always think about that Steve Jobs quote, "In retrospect, the dots connect," and it's like, okay, I worked at Tinder, and then I worked on the podcast team at Spotify. How do you meld the two? You create a dating podcast, and that's sort of what I did just because I was so close to the product. I loved podcasting and I knew I wanted to try it. And it was sort of like this passion project, just something that I was doing on the side for a bit. And I was really enjoying it. I loved connecting with people. I loved talking about the dating experience for other people. I loved hearing their stories. I loved hearing their tidbits. And as a result, I started creating content like to promote the podcast, and I would create content on TikTok and Instagram and share that and talk about just so many things like my dating life and just the dating wisdom that I have. And one day I created this I thought it was a benign piece of content. I was speaking about what my life was like on a Saturday as a 29-year-old single woman at the time. And I said, I woke up this morning, I woke up a little hungover. I went to the Beyonce concert last night. I decided what I'm going to do with my days. I've never made shakshuka. I'm going to make this dish that I've never made. I'm going to watch old episodes of The Real Housewives of New York. And that day I like spoke to my sister when I woke up, and she had already been to soccer practice, kid's birthday party. She was doing so many
Very different
things.
day.
Very different day. And I always had this shame of, "Oh my god, you're still in bed at 10. Why aren't you doing more with your day?" But then I had this kind of reframe light bulb moment of, "Listen, I wanna be in partnership one day. Maybe I wanna be a mother one day, but I get to have this period of my life where I get to make shakshuka and watch Real Housewives, and we went to Beyonce concert last night." Like, what a beautiful time in my life that I get to do this. And so I made this video because I thought maybe people could relate. And whenever people are hard on themselves for being single or being at a point in their life that they thought they wouldn't be at, to embrace it and enjoy it. And I was getting a lot of positive reactions. And then all of a sudden, I just got this barrage of hate. Just, I don't know if I can curse, but like this shitstorm of hate. And all of a sudden I get all these people in my messages just saying horrible things about me, and someone comments, "Matt Walsh tweeted this." And I wasn't familiar with Matt Walsh. He's a right-wing political commentator. He tweeted it. At the time, I think I had like 7,000 followers on TikTok, like really, really small creator on TikTok. And he had 2.4 million followers on X. And he takes my video, he tweets it to his followers, and he says, "This girl, her life is meaningless, and she's too stupid to realize how meaningless her life is because her life revolves around celebrities and pop stars, and she doesn't have a family, and her life has no meaning." And yeah, and all his haters came for me. Him and Candace Owens kind of doubled down. Stephen Miller, never experienced anything like it. And I deleted TikTok off my phone. I did not want to engage with the comments. I did not need to read about what people
No.
were saying about me. They were saying horrible things about me. I had random people in my life checking in, asking if I was okay. I was trending on Twitter. They were just saying the worst things. People were telling me not to look at Twitter. And I went to sleep that night really worried because, like, my address is public knowledge. I purchased my home, and I was just worried about my safety. But then I thought, I need to make my point across, and I need to tell people why I have this platform and who I create content
Sure.
for. And I realized in that situation, for so long I thought that people shamed me for being single and not having children because I was Russian Jewish. Like, I thought it was a cultural thing. I thought it was just occurring in my community, and then I realized this is a societal thing. Like, Matt Walsh and Candace Owens think my life is meaningless and I'm stupid because of the way that I choose to live my life, and I don't have kids at 29 years old. And I realized this is a bigger thing, and so many people feel this way.
Mm.
And after that, Mark Cuban came to my defense, and basically all the people who I wanted my message to reach, it reached the good side, it reached the good people. And I grew my following. My podcast charted on Apple Podcasts, and I kind of had really great opportunities coming my way. I was put in the TikTok Creator Fund, and all of these great things started to happen, and I
Wow.
realized this can be something. Like, this I can build this platform, and this is needed. And the messages that I was receiving were things like, "I do feel this shame, and I do fear being single, and you make me feel less alone, and thank you so much for everything that you do." And I just felt like it was this glimpse of, I need to be doing this. And I had
Wow.
been feeling really, I was feeling a bit dissatisfied in my role, not feeling like I was making an impact as much as I would like to. And when I was receiving these messages, I just thought, this is like really the purpose-driven stuff that I want to be doing. And I got this opportunity to move to Austin. I could no longer work at the company I was working for, and I thought, the universe is literally giving me a moment where this is what you've been wanting. You've been wanting to do purpose-driven
Yeah.
stuff. You've been wanting to have this platform. Your life is kind of headed in this direction. When are you ever gonna bet on yourself? So it's opened so many doors. That being said, it's really hard to be an entrepreneur and do things on your own. As much as being a creator is like, oh, it's a business. Like, this is your own business. And so I'm at this very interesting inflection point with it where it's hard to make it into a business, and it's hard to do it alone.
I just want to say how remarkable and that whole experience was that you had. I mean, you literally, like, one of the cruelest internet realities, which is that you can go viral for something you don't want to go viral for, was eventually the validator and the sort of like press point that launched you into the next level, right?
I was written about in Rolling Stone, on NBC, The View
Mark
covered me.
Cuban came to your
Yeah.
rescue.
Yeah. It truly always comes in a different package than you expect it to. And so that was the lesson for me of just, if you are resilient, it will come.
Right. Now, I do want to talk about the realities of being an entrepreneur because you bravely decided that you were going to bet on yourself and leave the stability of corporate and all that comes with it. I'm sure there are challenges. So I know you were about to talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, no one teaches you influencer. Like, I
No.
just, a creator or anything or business owner, like, I think you don't realize until you're in it. There were just things that would creep up in life that were kind of frustrating. Right now, if, like, you asked me what I would want in my dream scenario, it would be like, I'm going to a podcast studio, I have a producer, all those things are happening. And the truth is like, if you do see and you wanna compare yourself to other people, like, a lot of these people are self-funding their podcasts, and it's really expensive to hire a producer, a sound editor, to rent a studio. Those are all investments up front, and then you can't even guarantee that the promotion that you put in is gonna pop off. Like, there is so much involved, and so I do think that there are, like, 2 sides of the coin of, okay, well, corporate America doesn't give you the flexibility to pursue and chase your dreams in certain regards, but then chasing your dreams comes with 100 different responsibilities. You know who has inspired me recently is Doechii. Like, I don't know if you saw that video that's gone viral of her, but 5 years ago she was like, I just got laid off from my job, and I think I'm just gonna go see if I can get an internship or something. And 5 years later, she was winning a Grammy.
I mean, Something that I hear when you're talking about this is that you have to choose your hard, right? Because there's something hard about being at a job that's not inspiring you. There's something that feels challenging about not feeling motivated to wake up every day and do something you love. And there's also hard building a content business, any sort of entrepreneurial pursuit. There's hard anywhere. So how do you decide that this is the hard you want to invest your time in? Because I'm sure if I asked you, like, would you trade all this just to, like, go back to working your desk job and you'd have to say goodbye to this? I mean, would you?
Pretty in tune with my gut, and so I understand that my purpose in life is to help people feel less ashamed for being single because it was my journey. And if I can help impart any wisdom in that regard of enjoying your single life and feeling really fulfilled by your life, that is what I hope to impart on people. And that's why I still create content and why I still interview people. And that is what I want to bring to the world. Do I absolutely know how to monetize it yet? Not exactly. But I think that I had to experience this so that I understood what the journey looks like. And something that my therapist said to me recently is like, I've been applying to corporate roles again because it's hard. It's nice to have a steady income.
Yeah.
And I said to her, nothing's biting. And she's like, because you don't really want it.
Yeah.
You don't really want it. And it is indicative of how you are acting when you want something. What are you showing when you want something? Like you're like, yeah, I'll sit on a plane and like be writing an outline to interview someone because like I want to interview them.
Right. You want a stable financial system. That's what you want.
Yes.
And so it makes sense that, the structure that you're familiar with that provides steady income is corporate.
Yeah.
But if you could find that in your mission, then I don't think you'd want to necessarily be back in corporate, but that will be your journey to decide. And you're right, the universe may continue to close the doors and say you don't really want this. So keep at it.
Yeah. The universe, I mean, to your point of care less, it is like when you surrender and allow the doors to open. I now have just made peace with the fact that there might be more lessons for me to learn because I am someone who highly values growth and evolution. I've got more lessons to learn, and so I'm putting my seatbelt on and buckling in.
And even going back to the first story we talked about, I mean, had you just stuck things out in your relationship and chosen to live as part of a partnership that you didn't feel satisfied in, like, you would be missing out and the world would be missing out on your voice to talk about how empowering it is to embrace being an individual.
I always say that the book is gonna have a lot of chapters, and it's gonna
Yeah.
be a really good book. It's gonna be a juicy book.
I will be the first one to order. So I want to end with a question. What do you think your 80-year-old Julia would say to you at this stage of life? It's
My
okay.
80-year-old has a lot of compassion for me, but I think she'd say to me, "You're so much better than you think you are."
I mean, we spend a lot of time doing, like, inner child work, the elder work. What does our inner elder say to this child? That's the new
I
guiding principle. So let's tell everybody how they can stay in touch with you
Yeah.
and follow you and keep supporting your journey.
Yeah, the podcast is called Pretty Much Done everywhere where you can find your podcasts. And then I am PMD Pod, PMD on Instagram, TikTok, and you can find me there.
Perfect. And I will link everything in these show notes. Thank you for all the wisdom, for staying committed to seeing
Mhm.
how all these dots connect because they will.
Yes.
And I'm excited to keep being your friend and your cheerleader.
Thank you. Likewise.
Thanks for tuning in to Care Less with Carly. If this episode resonated with you or reminded you to stop living by someone else's rules, I would love to hear about it. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you enjoyed today's conversation, leaving a quick review means the world and helps more people find the show. If there's a guest you'd love to hear from, DM me their name at carelesswithcarly on Instagram or drop me a comment. I'm always looking for powerful, honest voices to bring into this space. Until next time, you got this. Keep caring less about what others think and more about what makes you come alive.